The mystery of what happened to the Ark of the Covenant has long captivated theologians, Bible scholars, and archaeologists. King Josiah of Judah issued an order to the keepers of the Ark of the Covenant to bring it back to the temple in Jerusalem in the 18th year of his rule. 2 Chronicles 35, 1-6, 2 Kings 23, 21-23. The location of the Ark is not stated again in the Bible after that. King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon seized control of Jerusalem 40 years later and ransacked the temple. Less than 10 years later, he came again, grabbed what was left in the temple, and then set fire to both the building and the city. What then became of the ark? Did Nebuchadnezzar take it? Was it obliterated alongside the city? Or was it taken away and safely buried, as it appears to have been when Pharaoh Shishak of Egypt invaded the temple during Rehoboam's rule? It's interesting to note that the ark is mentioned in Revelation 11:19 as being in heaven. Then God's temple in heaven was opened, and within his temple was seen the ark of the covenant. And there came flashes of lightning, rumblings, peals of thunder, an earthquake, and a severe hailstorm. Some have assumed that the ark was transported to heaven to be preserved because of this scripture, but it's unlikely that the ark that Moses built is the identical ark that John sees in his vision of heaven. We are aware that the tabernacle's objects were copies of the heavenly things, Hebrews 9:23, and that the sanctuary itself was only a copy and shadow of what is in heaven, Hebrews 8:5. The seventh trumpet, which signals the start of the earth's final series of judgments, is the subject of Revelation 11. The ark's appearance to John is likely intended to serve as a reminder that God has not abandoned his people, that he is among them, and that proper worship will soon be restored. According to the non-canonical book of 2 Maccabees, Jeremiah, following a divine revelation, ordered that the tabernacle and the ark should accompany him, and he went off to the mountain that Moses climbed to see God's inheritance, in other words, Mount Nebo, Deuteronomy 34:1, just before the Babylonian invasion. When Jeremiah got there, he located a cave room and placed the tent, the ark, and the altar of burnt offerings before blocking the entrance, 2:4-5. Some of the people who followed him attempted to mark the way as they ascended, but they were unsuccessful. When Jeremiah learned of this, he chastened the people, saying, "The place is to remain unknown until God gathers his people together again and shows them mercy. Then the Lord will disclose these things, and the glory of the Lord will be seen in the cloud, just as it appeared in the time of Moses, and when Solomon prayed that the temple might be gloriously sanctified." 2:6-8. It is unknown whether this second-hand narrative is true. Even if it is, as the account itself claims, we won't know until the Lord returns. According to yet another theory about its whereabouts, Rabbi Shlomo Goren and Yehuda Getz assert that the missing ark is buried beneath the Temple Mount, where it was buried before Nebuchadnezzar could take it away. Unfortunately, the Dome of the Rock, a sacred Islamic landmark, is now located on the Temple Mount, and the local Muslim community forbids its excavation, so it's impossible to determine whether Rabbis Goren and Getz are correct. Among other people, explorer Vendell Jones thinks that a piece of evidence discovered with the Dead Sea Scrolls, the mysterious copper scroll of Qumran, Cave 3, is essentially a kind of treasure map that pinpoints the locations of several priceless artifacts looted from the temple before the arrival of the Babylonians, including the missing Ark of the Covenant. Nobody has yet been able to find all of the requisite geographic features indicated on the scroll. Therefore, it is unclear whether or not this is true. It's interesting to note that some academics believe the copper scroll may be the document mentioned in 2 Maccabees 2:1 and 4, which recounts Jeremiah concealing the ark. This is a fascinating theory, but it hasn't been proven. Graham Hancock, a former East African correspondent for The Economist, released a book in 1992 called The Sign and the Seal, A Quest for the Lost Ark of the Covenant. in which he asserted that the ark had been hidden in Axum, an old Ethiopian city near St. Mary of Zion's Church. The BASE Institute's Robert Cornuke, an explorer, thinks Axum may be where the ark is currently located. The Church of St. Mary of Zion in Axum, according to Ethiopians, is where the ark is currently located. They undoubtedly possess an old ark. Kebra-Nigate, their 14th century history, describes how Menelik I of Ethiopia, the son of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, snuck into Solomon's temple late at night with his followers, took the ark, and substituted a fake for it. Another explanation for the Ethiopian ark is that it was transported to Ethiopia by Shishank's Cushites after Shishank invaded Jerusalem in 925 BC, 2 Chronicles 12:3. According to another theory, the ark may have traveled to Ethiopia from the Jewish temple in Elephantine, Egypt, which had acquired it from the Judeans before the Babylonian conquest. However, all of these assertions are refuted by the facts that the ark was still in Judah throughout the reign of Josiah, that the Judeans would never have taken their most revered artifact outside of the Holy Land, and that the temple priests and Levites would have been able to distinguish between the real and a false ark. We must assume that the old Ethiopian ark must be a copy, possibly from the Elephantine Temple. Of course, there are different opinions on the location of the ark. One is that Queen Athaliah and her aides stole the ark, or the ark has decomposed into the charred remains of a lembra drum that is rotting in the cellar of the Harara Museum. But nobody has yet discovered it there. Similar to Michael Sanders, an archaeologist who has not yet found the ark is thought to be concealed in an old Egyptian temple near the Israeli hamlet of Daharia. Other viewpoints include those from Mexico, Japan, North America, Scotland, England, and Ireland. According to a dubious Irish legend, the ark is located beneath Ireland's hill of Tara. According to some academics, this is where the Irish pot of gold at the end of the rainbow myth originated. The claims of Ron Wyatt and Tom Kreutzer, who claim to have seen the lost Ark of the Covenant buried beneath Mount Calvary and to have seen it on Mount Pisgah near Mount Nebo, are even less credible. The archaeological community holds little regard for any of these men, and neither has been able to provide any supporting data for their outrageous claims. When we ask, where is the Ark of the Covenant? Nothing is more startling than the Bible's silence on the topic. How did the center of Israel's religion suddenly and so quietly vanish? A powerful silence. It implies that the ark was taken out of the temple with the knowledge of the leaders of Judah. If it had been different, someone would have made a note of the loss for future generations, just like they did with the other artifact. In truth, it appears that the consolidation of worship was only a small part of Josiah's order from 621 BC. Around 700 BC, during the reign of Josiah's great-grandfather Hezekiah, the prophets Micah and Isaiah already prophesied the Babylonians would plunder and destroy the temple. Many others, including Jeremiah, Uriah ben Shemaiah, Huldah, and Zephaniah, predicted a disaster that would destroy the city and temple during Josiah's lifetime. Josiah and the temple officials must have given the ark some attention and quietly hidden it after receiving such a warning. The last information on the ark may be found in the final chapters of the Chronicles books, which conclude the Jewish Bible. After the ark had been placed in the temple, the people are instructed to travel to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple. 2 Chronicles 35:3, 36:23. The ark, the cause for the temple's existence, would be found in Jerusalem, and the temple was to be rebuilt around it, as some later generations of Judahites did. But where might this be if the ark is still secret today in the same location where Josiah and his men kept it? David transformed the mountaintop into a flat area supported by a substructure and dug tunnels, chambers, and cisterns cisterns beneath the mount itself to create the temple site. A cross-section of the mount would reveal that, like one of the great pyramids, it is filled with hidden rooms and tunnels. David's motivation for doing this was sound. The temple was intended to be Israel's most significant structure. It was to house enormous sums of money, the national treasury, the repository for Israel's genealogical data, as well as the sacred text. It was to serve as the haven for the country's holiest artifacts, including the Ark. Therefore, the mount needed to be well supplied with secret vaults to be secure against any potential threat. Since the temple was destroyed in AD 70, the mount has gone through several phases of neglect, profanity, conflict, conquest, and construction. However, no one has ever dug it up. In retaliation for the Judeo-Persian invasion of Christian Jerusalem in AD 614, the Byzantines converted the mount into a garbage dump. The temple's location was later preserved by Caliph Abd al-Malik, who constructed a shrine there following the Muslim invasion. The tunnels under the mount, however, were always locked. Therefore, the Ark being hidden by Josiah's Kohanim in the tunnels under the Temple Mount is by far the most likely scenario. The Bible itself makes this claim. According to the books of Kings, the Ark's poles are still present in the holy place. Even though the poles may not have been removed from the Ark, we might conclude that the Ark and its poles were present in the holy place before, during, and after the Babylonian invasion, because these texts were written after the Babylonian catastrophe. According to the Hebrew concept of a sacred place, the holiness of the temple extends both horizontally into the soil below it and vertically upward into the sky above it. Both the region above and below the Holy of Holies are considered to be equally holy. This is one of the reasons why modern Israel forbids plane travel over the Temple Mount. The pole's continued presence in the holy place suggests that the Ark is concealed deep within the Temple Mount, underneath the Holy of Holies. The Ark is ultimately inaccessible to everyone but God. There are still intriguing possibilities like the ones mentioned above, but the truth is the Ark hasn't been located. The author of 2nd Maccabees might be right. We might not learn what happened to the Ark of the Covenant until the Lord himself comes back.